Did you know that the most feared monster of ancient Greece was actually a victim? Before we reveal the truth, let me take you back thousands of years to a time when gods walked among mortals and temples stood as monuments to divine power. Medusa. Just hearing that name conjures images of absolute terror. Snake hair writhing with venom, a stone-cold gaze that could freeze your heart. A monster so horrifying that even the bravest warriors trembled at the mention of her name. But here's what they don't tell you in the legends. That's not where her story begins. Long before the serpents coiled through her hair, before the curse that would damn her for eternity, before the legend that would haunt humanity for thousands of years, Medusa was something entirely different. She was beautiful. Breathtakingly, impossibly beautiful. Medusa wasn't born a monster. She was born human, a young woman in ancient Greece, blessed with beauty that turned heads wherever she walked. Her hair flowed like silk, dark and lustrous. Her eyes sparkled with intelligence and grace. Her features were so perfect that poets wrote verses comparing her to the goddesses themselves. But Medusa wanted more than beauty. She wanted purpose. She wanted meaning. So she made a choice that would change her life forever. She dedicated herself to Athena, the goddess of wisdom, warfare, and strategic thinking. Athena, the virgin goddess who valued purity, intellect, and devotion above all else. Medusa became a priestess in Athena's temple. This wasn't just any temple. This was one of the most sacred places in all of ancient Greece. Marble columns that reached toward the heavens, floors polished so perfectly they reflected the sky. Statues of the goddess herself, carved with such detail they seemed alive. Incense filled the air, sacred fires burned eternally. And Medusa? She was the jewel of this temple. She spent her days in prayer, in study, in devotion. She took a vow of chastity, dedicating her body and soul to the goddess. She wore white robes that symbolized her purity. Golden jewelry marked her status as a high priestess. Other priestesses looked up to her. Worshippers admired her dedication. People traveled from distant lands just to see her, not just for her beauty, but for the grace with which she carried herself, the wisdom in her words, the kindness in her actions. Medusa was living proof that a mortal could achieve something divine through dedication and purity. She was happy. She was fulfilled. She was exactly where she wanted to be. Until one day, everything changed. Poseidon, the god of the seas, earthquakes and storms, saw her. And he wanted her. Now let me be clear about who Poseidon was. This wasn't just any god. This was one of the most powerful beings in the entire Greek pantheon. Brother to Zeus himself, ruler of all the oceans, commander of tsunamis and tidal waves, a god with a temper as violent as the storms he controlled. Poseidon was known for taking what he wanted, and when he saw Medusa in Athena's temple, praying, devoted, pure, he didn't care about any of that. He didn't care that she was a priestess. He didn't care about her vows. He didn't care that this was Athena's sacred temple, the most holy place dedicated to his niece, another Olympian goddess. Poseidon violated Medusa, right there, in Athena's temple, on the sacred floor where Medusa had prayed every single day. Imagine that moment, the terror, the betrayal, the complete helplessness of a mortal woman against the physical power of a god. Medusa had dedicated her entire life to purity, to devotion, to serving the divine. And a god himself destroyed all of that in moments. She couldn't fight back. How do you fight a god? She couldn't run. Where do you run when a deity can command the very earth beneath your feet? She couldn't scream for help. Who would dare intervene against Poseidon? And when it was over, Poseidon simply left. Back to his ocean kingdom, back to his throne beneath the waves. No consequences, no punishment, no guilt, because he was a god. And gods in ancient Greece were above mortal concepts of justice. But Medusa, Medusa was left there, broken, traumatized, violated in the most sacred place she knew. The temple that had been her sanctuary was now the site of her greatest trauma. She probably thought it couldn't get worse. She was wrong, because Athena found out what happened in her temple. Now, here's where you'd expect justice, right? Here's where you'd expect the goddess of wisdom to show compassion, to punish Poseidon, to comfort her devoted priestess who had been violated through no fault of her own. But that's not what happened. Athena was furious, absolutely, divinely furious, but not at Poseidon, at Medusa. Think about that. The victim, the priestess who had dedicated her life to serving this goddess, the woman who had been violated by a god in the goddess's own temple. She was the one who received Athena's rage. Why? Some legends say Athena was jealous of Medusa's beauty. Some say she was angry that her temple had been desecrated, and Medusa was an easier target than Poseidon. Some say Athena couldn't punish her uncle, a fellow Olympian, so she punished the mortal instead. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. Medusa would pay the price, not Poseidon. Medusa and Athena's punishment. It wasn't just cruel, it was eternally, horrifically, devastatingly cruel. Athena cursed Medusa, transformed her, twisted her beautiful form into something monstrous. Her hair, that beautiful flowing hair that had been compared to silk, to midnight, to poetry itself, began to move, to writhe, to change. Each strand thickened, scales appearing, fangs forming. Her hair transformed into dozens, hundreds of venomous serpents, hissing, striking, forever coiled around her head like a crown of nightmares. Her skin, once smooth and radiant, became rough, scale-like in places. Her nails turned to claws, her teeth sharpened. But the worst part, her eyes, those eyes that had once sparkled with intelligence and kindness. Athena cursed those eyes with a power so terrible that anyone who looked directly at Medusa would instantly turn to solid stone, forever frozen in their last moment of horror. Medusa couldn't control it. She couldn't turn it off. One glance, and living flesh became cold marble. Friend or foe, innocent or guilty, it didn't matter. Anyone who met her gaze would die, transformed into a statue, a monument to her curse. Do you understand what that means? Medusa could never look at another person again, ever. She could never make eye contact, never see a friendly face looking back at her, never know the comfort of seeing compassion in someone's eyes. She was completely, utterly, eternally alone. And here's the truly tragic part. The hero Perseus, guided by the gods, was sent to kill the monster. He was given a mirrored shield, a sword, and winged sandals. He found Medusa in her lair, surrounded by the stone figures of her victims. Using the shield to see her reflection, he avoided her gaze and, in one swift motion, beheaded her. From her neck sprang the winged horse Pegasus and the giant Chrysaor. The tragic victim, beautiful priestess, and terrifying monster was finally defeated, her head becoming a weapon for Perseus to use on his further adventures. In the sun-drenched lands of ancient Greece, where gods and mortals walked a fine line between reverence and ruin, lived a maiden whose beauty was said to rival the dawn itself. Her name was Medusa. Her hair, a cascade of golden silk, caught the sunlight, and her eyes held the depth of the tranquil sea. She was not a goddess, nor a queen, but a mortal woman, devout and pure of heart, who chose a life of service as a priestess in the grand temple of Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war. People traveled from distant shores not just to worship Athena, but to catch a glimpse of Medusa. They whispered that her beauty was a divine gift, a reflection of the heavens on earth. Medusa, however, remained humble. She performed her duties with grace and piety, her days filled with prayers and rituals, her heart dedicated solely to the virgin goddess she served. Her life was one of quiet devotion, a sanctuary of peace within the hallowed marble walls of the Parthenon. But in a world ruled by the whims of powerful gods, beauty could be a blessing and a curse. And for Medusa, it would prove to be a fatal one. One day, Poseidon, the mighty god of the sea, ruler of earthquakes and storms, cast his gaze upon the mortal realm and saw Medusa. Consumed by a tempestuous desire, he was not moved by her devotion or her vow of celibacy. He saw only a prize to be taken. He pursued her relentlessly, his divine power a terrifying force against her mortal will. Medusa fled, her heart pounding with terror, seeking refuge in the one place she believed she was safe, the sacred temple of her patron goddess, Athena. She ran to the foot of Athena's great statue, praying for protection, for divine intervention. But her prayers went unanswered. The sanctuary was violated. Poseidon, in his arrogance, desecrated the holy ground, and in a brutal act of divine entitlement, he assaulted Medusa right there, on the cold marble floor of Athena's temple. When the terrible ordeal was over, a shattered Medusa looked up, not to the leering face of Poseidon, but to the cold stone eyes of the goddess she had served so faithfully. And in that moment, she saw not compassion, but rage. Athena was incandescent with fury, but her anger was not directed at her powerful uncle Poseidon, a fellow Olympian. Instead, she turned her wrath upon the victim. Perhaps she was shamed by the defilement of her temple, or perhaps she saw Medusa's beauty as the cause, a temptation that had led to the sacrilege. In a cruel twist of divine justice, Athena decided that if Medusa's beauty had caused this chaos, then that beauty must be destroyed. A terrifying transformation began. Medusa screamed, not in fear this time, but in agony and disbelief as the goddess's curse took hold. Her beautiful, flowing hair, once the color of spun gold, writhed and thickened, twisting into a hissing nest of venomous snakes. Her skin, once soft and radiant, turned a sickly, scaly green. Her gentle eyes, once mirrors of the calm sea, became burning orbs of yellow, filled with a power so terrible that any living creature who met their gaze would instantly turn to stone. Medusa, the devout priestess, the innocent maiden, was gone. In her place stood a monster, a Gorgon. She was punished for being a victim, her trauma made manifest in a grotesque form for all to fear. Banished and reviled, Medusa fled to a desolate island at the edge of the world. Her only companions were the statues of unfortunate sailors and wanderers who had strayed too close, their faces frozen in eternal terror. Loneliness became her world. Her heart, once full of piety, now pulsed with a bitter cocktail of grief, rage, and despair. She was a monster, but she was a monster created by the injustice of the gods. She had been wronged by a god, then cursed by a goddess, and now feared by all of humanity. Every hiss of the snakes on her head was a constant reminder of her stolen life, of the innocence that had been ripped away from her. The world had turned her into a monster, and so a monster she would be. Meanwhile, far away, another story was unfolding. In the kingdom of Serpents, a young hero named Perseus was embarking on a perilous quest. The tyrannical king Polydectes desired Perseus's mother, Danae, and sought to get rid of the protective son. So, he commanded Perseus to perform an impossible task, to bring him the head of the Gorgon Medusa. An arrogant boast sealed Perseus's fate, and the young demigod, son of Zeus, had no choice but to accept the deadly challenge. But Perseus did not go alone. The gods, in their fickle and often contradictory ways, decided to aid him. Athena, the very goddess who had cursed Medusa, ironically offered her assistance. She gave him a polished bronze shield, so reflective it could be used as a mirror, warning him never to look directly at the Gorgon. The god Hermes gifted him a pair of winged sandals to soar through the skies, and an adamantine sword sharp enough to slice through any substance. Hades, lord of the underworld, provided his helm of darkness, a cap that would render the wearer invisible. Armed with these divine tools, Perseus was no ordinary mortal challenger. He was a divinely backed assassin. After a long and arduous journey, following the cryptic guidance of the Grey Sisters, Perseus finally reached Medusa's desolate island. The air was heavy with silence, the landscape a macabre gallery of stone figures, men and beasts caught forever in their last moment of terror. Using Athena's shield as his guide, he navigated the eerie garden of statues, his eyes fixed on the reflection, never daring to look up. He found her in a dark cave. She was asleep, the serpentine hair on her head moving with a soft, slithering sound. In the reflection of his shield, Perseus saw her face. He saw not just a monster, but a visage etched with sorrow, with a loneliness that seemed to seep from the very stone around her. For a fleeting moment, perhaps he hesitated, but his quest, his mother's safety, and the will of the gods drove him forward. Cloaked by the helm of darkness, he approached her silently. With one swift, decisive motion, he raised the adamantine sword. The blade sliced cleanly through her neck. The tragic life of Medusa, the priestess turned monster, ended not in battle, not in defiance, but in her sleep, unaware of the final injustice. Her story was a tragedy from its beautiful beginning to its bloody end. From her severed neck, two unexpected beings sprang forth. One was Chrysaor, a warrior with a golden sword. The other was Pegasus, the magnificent winged horse, a creature of pure white, a symbol of poetry and inspiration. It seemed that even in death, the innocence and beauty that Medusa once held found a way to be reborn, to fly free from the cursed form that had imprisoned it. Perseus placed the severed head, still potent with its petrifying power, into a special bag. As he flew away on his winged sandals, Medusa's two Gorgon sisters, Stheno and Euryale, awoke, screeching with rage at their sister's murder. But Perseus, hidden by the cap of invisibility, made his escape, leaving their grief and fury behind on the island of stone. The head of Medusa became a powerful weapon for Perseus. He used it to save Princess Andromeda from a sea monster and to turn the wicked king Polydectes and his court to stone, freeing his mother. He had completed his heroic quest. In the end, he presented the head to his patron, Athena. She accepted the grotesque trophy and mounted it onto the center of her shield, the Aegis. The face that she had created in an act of cruel punishment now became her symbol of power, a weapon to terrify her enemies. The final, bitter irony. Perseus was celebrated as one of the greatest heroes of Greece. His story was one of courage, divine favor, and triumph over a fearsome monster. But what of Medusa's story? Her narrative was twisted and buried, her identity reduced to a single, monstrous chapter in a hero's journey. She became a symbol of terror, a cautionary tale. But hers is not a story of a monster. It's the story of a victim, punished for her own suffering. A story of a devout woman whose faith was betrayed, whose body was violated, and whose very identity was stolen by the cruel whims of gods who valued power over justice. The myth of Medusa endures because it is a profound and uncomfortable tragedy. It forces us to look beyond the surface, to question the simple tales of heroes and monsters, and to see the human woman who was lost beneath the hissing snakes and petrifying gaze. Her legacy is a haunting reminder of how easily a victim can be recast as a villain, and how the stories we tell are shaped by those who hold the power. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of Greek mythology. If you found this story compelling, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales from the ancient world. Let us know in the comments which myth you'd like us to explore next. Until next time.